Hello and welcome back to some more of yesterday's RAM. In this video we're taking a look at the Nvidia Quadro K620. It's a workstation card that can be found on eBay for around 15 to 20 Great British pounds, or around $25 US. Released in 2014, the Quadro K620 is a low-profile 45 watt, so no additional power connector required, workstation card designed for accelerating CAD applications. It uses the GM107 GPU core, which is the same as that found in the GTX 750 Ti, but it's been cut down to 384 shaders. Memory is 2GB of DDR3, but it does have a 128-bit memory bus, so will perform better than a card with a 64-bit bus. We'll compare it to the closest Oland card, the R7250, which also has 384 shaders, a 128-bit memory bus, and 2GB of DDR3 memory. Is it enough for some basic 1080p gaming in 2023? Checking the specs in GPU-Z, we see it's using the GM107 core with 384 shaders clocked at 1059 MHz, boosting to 1124 MHz. The memory bus is 128-bit, connected to 2GB of Hynix DDR3, clocked at 900 MHz. This is a Generation 1 Maxwell card, so at the time of this video is still fully supported in drivers by Nvidia. Comparing the specs, the R7250 has a lower clock speed of 1050 MHz, but the memory is clocked higher at 1000 MHz, giving the R7250 greater memory bandwidth. The K620 has twice as many ROPs, which will give it better anti-aliasing performance and a faster fill rate. The R7250 is a GCN1 card, so is now out of support and uses much older drivers. Getting started with Heaven 4.0, I first ran the 720p low benchmark for comparison. Looking at the results, we can see that the K620 is way out ahead of the other cards tested, scoring 2,177 points, with an average frame rate of 86.4 FPS. I then used the same low settings as 720p, but bumped the resolution up to 1080p, as I think the K620 might just be able to manage it. Looking at the results, the K620 delivers an average frame rate of 46.5 FPS, while the R7250 only manages 28.8 FPS. The K620 scores 1,171 points to the R7250's 725. That makes the K620 around 40% faster than the R7250 in Heaven. If the K620 keeps performing like this, then we could have a 1080p bargain on our hands. Our first game is Overwatch 2, not very demanding at 1080p low settings. I'm using OBS to record in software, so CPU usage in the video will appear high. Checking the results, we see the K620 is able to put in a 60 plus average frame rate, while the 250 manages 47.8 FPS. Both cards suffer at the 1% and 0.1% lows, with neither card able to push past 10 FPS. I'll have to investigate the bottleneck in this title and pinpoint what's holding us back. Warframe at 1080p low settings was playable on both cards, but it was a nicer experience on the K620 thanks to its consistent results across the 1% and 0.1% lows. The K620 delivers an average frame rate of 63 FPS, while the 250 manages 42.1 FPS. At the 1% low, the K620 delivers 49.3 FPS to the 250's 31.6 FPS, but at the 0.1% low, the 250 drops down to 8.7 FPS, while the K620 delivers a much better 46.2 FPS. If you're looking to play Warframe at 1080p on a low-profile machine, the K620 is a better buy than the R7250. In Fortnite at 1080p with the performance renderer, the K620 and R7250 are neck and neck at the average frame rate, with the cards delivering 50 plus frames per second. The K620 pulls away at the 1% low with 26.4 FPS, compared to the 250's 9.8 FPS. At the 0.1% low, the cards are essentially tied at 7 FPS, which is pretty bad. However, the K620 delivers a better 1% low, so will deliver a smoother for longer experience compared to the R7 250. Rocket League heavily favours Nvidia's hardware, so it's no surprise here to see the K620 way ahead with an average frame rate of 114.8 frames per second, compared to 48.1 FPS for the R7 250. The K620 delivers a decent 1% low of 41.9 FPS, while the 250 can only manage 17.8 FPS. At the 0.1% low, the R7 250 delivers a better result with 9.9 FPS, while the K620 can only manage 4.5 FPS. But it was a mostly smooth experience on the K620, and that high average frame rate might mean we have some scope to tweak graphical settings up a little. If you're looking for a cheap low-profile card to play GTA 5 at 1080p, then the K620 might be one to look at, as it delivers an average frame rate of 55.6 frames per second. The R7 250 also does well, delivering 42.7 frames per second on average. The performance gap tightens at the 1% and 0.1% lows, but with the K620 still in the lead. At the 1% low, the K620 delivers 38.2 FPS, while the 250 manages 31.2 FPS. For the 0.1% lows, the K620 delivers 36.3 FPS, and the R7 250 29.7 FPS. Both cards will give you a nice experience in GTA 5, but the K620 is faster and smoother. The K620 maintains a steady lead over the R7 250 and Battlefield 1 at 1080p low settings, with an average frame rate of 30.7 frames per second, compared to 27.2 for the 250. The K620 maintains a 6 FPS lead over the 250 at the 1% and 0.1% lows. For the 1% low, the K620 scores 18.9 FPS, compared to the 250's 12.1 FPS. At the 0.1% low, the K620 delivers 10.6 FPS, while the 250 only manages 4.6 FPS. In Battlefield 1 at these settings, the K620 provides a slightly better experience than the R7 250, but still isn't really powerful enough for this title at 1080p. I'd recommend dropping the resolution or scaling to increase performance. Back to 2011 with Battlefield 3 now, an older DX11 title that still has a cult following. In Battlefield 3, the K620 demonstrates its superior DX11 performance, as it's generally faster than the R7 250. For the average frame rate, the K620 delivers 58.3 frames per second, compared to the 250's 41.5 FPS. And at the 1% low, the K620 delivers a better 41 FPS, compared to the 250's 30.7 FPS. The R7 250 delivers a better 0.1% low at 25.9 FPS, to the K620's cinematic 23.8 FPS. But it's a very close result, and you'd have a better overall experience on the K620. For Apex Legends, the Quadro K620 is the pick of these two, delivering better performance than the R7 250. For the average frame rate, the K620 delivers 31.7 FPS, compared to the R7 250's 28.6 FPS. At the 1% low, the K620 delivers 26 FPS, compared to 19 FPS for the 250. And at the 0.1% low, the K620 delivers 23.7 FPS, compared to the R7 250's 17.1 FPS. If you like to play Dota 2 on a low-profile machine, then the K620 might be of interest to you. It delivers an average frame rate of 104.4 frames per second, compared to the R7 250's 70.3 FPS. The cards are pretty much tied at the 1% low, but at the 0.1% low, we see the R7 250 pull ahead of the K620 with a better 0.1% low of 42.7 FPS, compared to 32.2 FPS for the K620. I'm guessing the difference in 0.1% lows is down to the R7 250's slightly faster memory speed, but you can have a good experience in Dota 2 on either of these cards at these settings. In Counter-Strike Global Offensive, the Quadro K620 delivers an average frame rate nearly 40% faster than the R7 250. The K620 manages 95.68 frames per second, compared to the 250's 66.15 frames per second. If you were looking for a cheap graphics card for Counter-Strike Global Offensive, then the K620 is a better pick than the R7 250. In Rainbow Six Siege, the K620 is the faster and more stable card. For the average frame rate, the K620 delivers 49.3 frames per second, compared to the 250's 40.1 FPS. For the 1% low, it's pretty close. The K620 manages 40.1 FPS to the 250's 32.6 FPS. But it's at the 0.1% low that the R7 250 fails, delivering only 5.6 FPS, compared to the K620's much better 39.3 FPS. The Quadro K620 is a better card for Rainbow Six Siege, as it delivers a faster and more consistent experience. PUBG is our final game, and neither card was quite up to it, but the K620 handled it better than the R7 250. For the average frame rate, the K620 delivered 47.1 frames per second, compared to the 250's 36.4 FPS. At the 1% low, the K620 remains strong with 29.5 FPS, but the R7 250 has dropped to a less than cinematic 20.8 FPS. Things are bad for both cards at the 0.1% low, but the K620 did better with 13.9 FPS, compared to the R7 250's poorer 4.9 FPS. You'd really want a faster card for playing PUBG, but out of the two, the K620 is a better choice. I'm a little disappointed with the Quadro K620. I thought it might be a banging little 1080p card for 15 Great British pounds, and while it's a faster and probably cheaper card than the R7 250, I thought it would do a little better. You can't overclock this card. I tried in MSI Afterburner, and I could adjust the sliders, but they just didn't apply. So dropping the resolution or scaling down to 900p would give you a little extra performance from this card. Still, if you're looking for a low-profile GPU for light gaming at 1080p and your budget is 15 Great British pounds, you could do worse than the Quadro K620. It might be a good card for console emulation. Speaking of console emulation, the next Fujitsu video will be console emulation on Linux, so watch out for that coming soon. That's all for now. Catch you next time, Rammers. Bob out.